Hi, and welcome back to Phrase Builder from Blarney Stone English. And today we're going to take a look at differentiating between make and do. Now we'll do this in two parts. In the first, we're going to watch a quick presentation looking at all of the patterns that we can usually find with the verb to make. And in the second part, we're going to look at the verb to do, the typical collocations, the patterns, and also make a comparison between make and do and decide when do we use one and when do we use the other. Now, the reason I've decided to start with these two verbs is because I speak Spanish, and I know that for Spanish people and Spanish speakers, this is a very difficult differentiation to make. So let's start by looking at the patterns that we use with the verb make. So let's look at the first and most important idea we associate with the verb to make. And this is the idea of creation, construction, invention. The idea that until we make something, it doesn't exist. Yeah? And this is the most common use of the verb without a shadow of a doubt. And also the main way we differentiate it from to do. Now we have loads of examples. I could give you thousands of examples. But if we look at these four, to make a plan, to make an excuse, to make breakfast, to make an arrangement, they seem like they have nothing in common. But they do. There is one common thread. None of these things exist until they are made. Yeah? So that is the most common use of the verb to make. And because of that, most of our collocations are going to follow this pattern. Let's have a look at some other patterns. For example, a very, very strong pattern we're going to find is the idea of progress. Yeah? So there are loads and loads and loads of examples. And it's often overlooked as a concept, but progress is really closely associated with make. We make progress, make advances, breakthroughs, headway, make things better. Anything at all to do with progress is going to be used with make. There will be one or two exceptions, like there always are, but in general, 99% of the time, progress goes with make. Alright? So we can assume that it will go with make. So the next one we're going to think about are relationships and reconciliation. And when we speak about forming relationships, we use the verb to make. And it could easily fall under the first category because we're inventing or creating something. But I think it's best to consider it apart. And we'll have a look at the idea also of reconciliation. So when we make friends, as I said in the introduction, we're not creating the friends, we're creating the friendship. But the idea is there. We make connections, and then for reconciliation, if we do something wrong, we upset our friends, or we've done something negative to somebody, we can make amends. And to repair our friendship, we can make up. And these are common threads that we'll find throughout, and very strong collocations for the verb to make. So the next idea we'll look at is causative make. And what is a causative verb? Well, a causative verb in English means the subject of the verb doesn't perform the action. Okay? So we'll see other examples of this as we go along. But with make, it expresses an obligation. So somebody created an obligation for me to do something else. It sounds complicated, but it's really not. For example, he made me wash the car. Alright, I borrowed my brother's car, I got it dirty, so afterwards he made me wash the car. He obliged me to wash the car. And there are loads of other examples we can think about. They made me wait. And the typical excuse from serial killers, the voices made me do it. But we have to be careful. We shouldn't listen to the voices in our heads. So the next idea we're going to look at is the idea of prepared statements or declarations. Now, we have many verbs that we use for communication, right? But for prepared ideas, make is the most common. We can make a point. Yeah, I have something important that I need to say. I'll make that point in a meeting or make that point in an argument. I can make a statement to the press or to the police. We make speeches. Yeah, and hopefully our speeches are usually prepared. We can make declarations. Yeah, and again, these are prepared communications. And we can make promises. Now, these aren't necessarily prepared, but again, it's something that you decide fixed that you're going to do. So the next idea is the idea of the comparison. Now, there is often a confusion here, and people tend to say to do comparisons. And there's an explanation, because you could consider a comparison to be a type of study, but we don't use it with do, like we use all other studies with do. It's an exception. We use comparisons with make. Alright, so we can make a comparison, we can make a distinction, and we can make a differentiation. Right? But as I say, it's apart from the idea of a study, because there's loads of types of comparisons we can make that have nothing to do with study. And the final idea we're going to talk about today is the idea of change. So when we think of any type of change, the noun usually collocates with make. We can make adjustments, make amendments, make alterations. Any type of change is almost certainly going to be used with make. Alright, so that's it for the patterns which we can find with make. There are more, but these are the most useful. Stay tuned for part 2 of the video, in which we'll discuss to do, the collocations that we have with that particular verb, and also a comparison between make and do. Thank you for watching.